Hey there, welcome to the Be Unmessable With podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio, and I am so happy to have the guest that I have today. First of all, he has had a vast impact in the world, but also a vast impact on my life personally. So Zdnenek is an entrepreneur in business, and he's a leader in the wealth management industry for more than 40 years. And he's the author of the best-selling books, Master Your Cash Flow, The Key to Grow and Retain Wealth, and Master Your Business Cash Flow, Grow the Company You Love, Live the Life You Want Now. He speaks my language for sure. He's also very prolific writing on social media. You can find him definitely on LinkedIn. And he's co-authored a 400-year genealogy of his family. We're going to get into that and what that took. Holy moly. He's the founder of many companies, and he recently co-founded a financial education company called Servat. And over the years, he's appeared, really everywhere you can imagine, from the New York Times to Wall Street Journal, Forbes, USA Today. I mean, he is not hiding, let's put it that way. He's lectured on financial and business planning and investment management across the country. And he's served on public boards, he's served on private boards, and he's had the pleasure of serving, so interesting to me, as a councilman and police commissioner in Flemington, New Jersey. He's listed in the international who's who of entrepreneurs, and he has so many hobbies. He likes to play classical piano, and I have been the benefit of a semi-recital in his home at time. He writes, he travels, he loves wine, he loves cooking, he reads, genealogy. I mean, this is exhausting. I'm like, as I'm saying this, this is like 10 lifetimes. He works with charitable causes, including the Inner City Scholarship Fund of New York City, and he mentors entrepreneurs. And I like the way he says this. He's privileged to live in New York City, Paris, and Miami. So welcome, my friend, Zdnenek.
Jocelyn, delighted to be here. Thank you for having me today.
I'm so glad that you said yes. And that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because, obviously you have plenty to do. You do not need more things to do. What had you say yes to being on this podcast?
When you sent me the invite, I didn't even hesitate. I think some of the work that you're doing with people is tremendous. You talk about being an impact to people. I mean, I see you every day on social media, talking to people. I've seen you in person, and I know my mission in life is to be a positive, powerful, and successful influence in the lives of others. I'm sure your mission is somewhere around there and very impactful. So if there's a chance to impact people, be my mission. And also always delighted to speak to you.
It's always delightful to speak to you too. We're missing our spouses on this podcast. Usually we're together with them when we're together. So it's lovely to see you alone for a change. And talk to me about how you ended up doing what you're doing, because, obviously you've had a vast career, and it's not just, single focused. It's in the same realm of wealth and management and impact. But how did you end up doing what you're doing?
Well, certainly, and I'm sure you can, it resonates with you. You start off by doing things and you look at it years later and you're doing something else and you wonder, wow, how did I get here? I'm a baker's son. When I was in Waldman, New Jersey, where I lived for a while, I worked with my father for about 12 seasons in a bakery. And so I'm a baker also. And I knew I did not want to be a baker in life. We were a struggling family. My father always provided, but we struggled. And I knew I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be wealthy. And when I was a kid, I remember having a dream of walking into a department store and I wanted to buy anything I wanted there because we couldn't at that time. So what I did, I went to college. I was the first one in my family to go to college, only the second one to finish high school. And I started out studying geology.
Geology, wow.
First love. But I realized after a couple of years in the program that I'd either have to teach or work for an oil company, and I didn't see my path to wealth. So I remember taking a course, business law, and the business degree seemed to be the way to go. So I graduated with a business degree, went to grad school, became a CPA, fell in love with tax work. I worked for H&R Block in college. I was a manager for them. When I first got out of college at 22, I had 10 offices. And I love tax work. So I got my CPA and I worked for a New York firm. And then I started my own firm about 40 some years ago. And it was a tax firm that we really specialized in helping businesses and people to be very aggressive in their tax positions. And then I being a high energy person, this is why I moved to Flemington and I was on the council and all that. I started getting other businesses. I bought real estate, had a real estate management company. If there was 10 minutes free in a day, I filled it with something. And I was working, I must have been working 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, made time to have a family, got married, had 2 kids. But I just liked being busy. But, I stretched myself too thin. And what happened around mid 80s, late 80s, we had a recession. Then there was a change in the tax laws. And it really hurt real estate. And all of a sudden, everything just came apart. Everything just fell apart. I mean, I was involved in developing 120 houses in Pennsylvania, tens of thousands of square feet of office space in the Hunterdon County area. You name it, 8, 10 partnerships, projects. And overnight, it all came crashing down. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to my business too, so that was suffering. So all of a sudden, I had something like $40,000 to $50,000 negative cash flow per month, and all my money in the bank disappeared. I was down to my last a few dollars, to be quite frank with you. I had to go back to my company, fire mentioned 2/3 of my staff. And I remember I was trying to get people to invest in the projects, and then one thing happened one night. From a very well-off businessman, tough businessman in our area. I was trying to get him to invest in a project. I went to his house. And the only time he could see me was 12 o'clock at night. He was so busy. And I grabbed it. And I'm there and I'm showing him this project and plans. And he looks at me and he sort of like has a little wry smile. And he says, "Al, put them aside." He said, "Al, this project's a dog." And he said, "And if I know you're in other projects, they're probably dogs too." He said, "So you need to start attacking and confronting the issue of this, or it's going to take it down." And he handed me a card of an attorney who was a workout attorney. He specialized in helping people work out of their bank problems. And so I called this guy. By the way, it was a long ride home that night.
It was 5 minutes, but it was like the longest 5 minutes of your life, right?
I probably hit bottom that night.
Yeah.
I just home to my wife, told her that we're in trouble. She knew we were in trouble, but that when the smoke cleared, we may not be able to hold on to our house. And she started crying, and then she did something which I always loved her for. Then she said, "Okay, now what do we have to do?" So you talk about being unmessable. She really was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got into action. I called the attorney. I poured out all my issues to him. And he said, "It's a real mess." He said, "But let's handle it." We started meeting with banks. We had meetings with banks. And by the way, not easy meetings. You go to a bank, you say, "I can't pay the $2 or $3 million that you gave me." And by the way, there were a couple that were understanding because a lot of people were having trouble at the time, but a lot of screaming, a lot of whatever, and tough meetings. I ate an awful lot of Tums at the time. But it took about 5 years and overall 10 years to work out every loan. I used to go to banks and propose how I was going to work it out. And some didn't want to. I had to give the land back or the project back. One particular bank worked with me really well. It was my office building. It was a very large building. And they took me up the courthouse steps right to the final minute. I was going to lose the building in 5 minutes. In fact, I just wrote an article on this. And all of a sudden he said, "Okay, fine, we'll give you another chance."
Wow.
And they got paid back every cent within a few years. Anyway, so firing 2/3 of my staff, messing up people's lives like that, messing up my own, messing up my family's. It was a real, it was a real experience to me. I swore to myself at that time, I would never be at the mercy of another bank. I would never be at the mercy of another bank if I because, banks are not your friends, and they shouldn't be. They're not there to take risk for you. They hand you all the risk. But you want to be careful, because in good times, everyone is having fun. Everyone makes money. It's the bad times that you have to really have the reserves or cash flow, so that the banks, when they pull the loans or whatever, don't come after you. So, and by the way, so that was in the late 80s. By the year 2008, when we had the crash,
Right.
didn't have to lay off one person. We were growing. We kept on growing, and we had plenty of reserves. So I learned a big lesson at that time. But that was probably one of the most poignant or terrible crises as far as financially. But I don't know. Do you have questions about that? You want to?
Yeah, I do actually, because this is called Be Unmessable With. So that's obviously a circumstance that could have taken you out for the count. And that's what I call being messable with. But somehow you did transcend it. And what would you say if you had to point to what you relied on or what you drew upon to transcend from what could have been a complete, like, forget about it? That's a New York term, forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it.
To being able to then create what you created in terms of such a powerful and successful company for so many people, and so many jobs that you provided, and the difference you made for so many people.
It's really great question. And the first thought that comes to my mind is that I learned to ask for help. I would tell you, I was raised in an Irish Catholic household, and you did not ask for help. You were thought it was a shame to ask for help. You're self-reliant. You powered through yourself, whatever. And I remember I wasn't asking for help. And that guy that night gave me that card, and I could have walked home and just torn it up, but I decided, and it was against everything I was taught. I decided to ask for help, and when I went to this attorney, and I remember going to the first bank president, sitting in his office, and he happened to be a friend also. And I just told him, I cannot pay this loan anymore, whatever. And I said, I need your help to work this out. And he was so great. He said, we all have these things in life. Let's see what we can do. Amazing. So the fact that I asked for that, and I would remember thinking how many people came out of the woodwork when I told them I was having trouble and whatever, it taught me a lesson. It taught me a lesson because at that time I was also going through some coaching, and I was going through some coaching with a person, and he said to me that, okay, let's talk about the story of Al. Who's Al Zdnenek? And I won't bore you with all the facts, but at the end of this day, he said, I realized that this Al Zdnenek, if we were to write a book, it would be Al Zdnenek doesn't need anyone's help. Al Zdnenek has all the answers. Al Zdnenek, righteous. He knows. and from that meeting and then this, it just changed my life, because I finally realized that you not only have to ask for help, but when help comes, when it's offered, you have to accept it. It's the only way people can contribute to your life sometime. If you can come off, and I used to come off so perfect, so in charge, whatever. If you're so perfect and in charge, and people don't know how to contribute to you, and so so that was a big lesson for me, that no matter, and I to this day, because I don't think it really changes the person. I'm still the same person I am, except that I know I am that. So I have to look for those things. It just doesn't come natural for me. But anytime anyone now offers help, whether it's attended on a flight or wherever, you accept it, you thank them. It makes them, you be your mission to them. You're out to make a difference in their lives, and making a difference in their lives is making sure they can contribute to yours.
That's beautiful. And I think so many entrepreneurs should take a page from that book, because in the work that I do with people when I'm coaching founders and entrepreneurs, one of the biggest pitfalls is they're trying to do it all, not have it all. Having it all is very different than doing it all. And it requires being able to make requests for support and also delegating. Because as an entrepreneur, and I know you coach and mentor many entrepreneurs, I think they run into like or we run into a problem of thinking, well, I'll just get it done. It's easier if I just do it than to have to train somebody and explain it and do all this stuff. It's just, I'll just get it done. But it rips people off, to your point, of being able to rise to the occasion and contribute to the project or to the company or to you, or even just develop themselves. So say a little bit about that.
You're really talking about trust there too. Because I was that way also. I can do it. I know best, whatever. So not only could I do that and I wouldn't accept their help, is that I also didn't trust them. And I think that's another thing, entrepreneurs or people, even at home, do we trust our children? Do we trust our spouse? Do we trust people around us, our partners? I mean, you've got to also trust people as well as ask for help or accept the contributions that they want to make.
Well, I know for a fact that my husband does not trust me to fold the laundry because he is much better at it than I am. And I think I secretly suck at it so that he does it, you know?
I'm sure that's a big sacrifice.
Yes, exactly. I'm always like, well, you know, he's just better at it. What am I going to do? You know?
Are you sure you're not purposely bad at it?
I think so. Well, I purposely never learned how to do it. So that is, in essence, purposely being bad at it. It's kind of like making the bed. I'm like, I don't know, you like it a certain way, so I'll let you do it. You know?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, really. So tell me, you know, who's inspired you in your life?
Well, probably the biggest inspiration I've had in my life is my father. My father did not finish eighth grade, or sorry, he finished eighth grade. He was always ashamed of that. Very well-read man, very well educated, self-educated. You know, he was a baker. He had a hard job. He didn't really know anything else in life. Probably he didn't want to take any risks there, but he made sure he. When I was a child, my mother and father were separated when I was about 2 or 3 years old. My father eventually took charge of myself, my sister, and another brother being raised. And I would tell you, if it wasn't for my father, especially raising us, because we lived with my mother for a time, and my mother had a lot of issues. I love her, but she had a lot of issues. But my father finally took control of us when I was in my early teens, and if he didn't, I probably would have quit school. I don't know what I would have done. But I owe it to my father that he kept me in school. He encouraged me. He didn't know what college was, but he said he wanted me to go to it. He said, I want you to learn the baking business in case you ever need a job. Which I'm glad I never did.
You could be baking croissants in Paris. That could be your new future.
But he did this. He worked day and night for us sometimes. Again, we didn't have much, but we never always had enough to eat or whatever. And family was everything to him. Family, loyalty, doing 110% of your job. Even if the job was menial or it was temporary, you did 110%. I mean, when I worked with him, he demanded, and I gave 110%. From that, I learned my work ethic. Even though I was at jobs and I knew I was going to quit to start my business, I gave 110%. I never left on 2 weeks' notice. I said, how much time do you need? The company asked me to stay 3 months. One time I did. You know, so those lessons of loyalty, family, work ethic, it's what really has made my whole life. I owe how I live, Paris, New York, and Miami, to my father.
And I really hear in what you're sharing character. You know, that's what I hear being developed, you know, because so many people don't have that kind of work ethic these days. And, you know, when they do, it stands out. And when you've mentored people over the years, as you've worked with people, what have you seen sort of is like a big thing that messes with people, a common thing that messes with them in fulfilling on their vision for their company or their industry or whatever it is that you're working with them on?
Well, for one thing, I think there's a lack of communications they not only have with other people, but with themselves. That's one. But the biggest thing I see too is lack of responsibility, lack of accountability. They don't understand what being responsible is, or accountable. They don't understand what partnership is. And by the way, it took me a long time to understand what partnership is. But and so I make sure they're responsible and accountable. I was mentoring someone once, and he was telling me he just lost a friend. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I was discussing political views, my friend. All of a sudden he said, well, I can't deal with you anymore now. And he starts saying, well, why, this about the friend? I said, hold it. Who were you being that he felt the only way to talk to you was to end the relationship? Where's your responsibility in this? And he starts saying, well, how about him? I said, yeah, he has responsibility, but that's his. What is your responsibility? And so, and by the way, having that in business,
yes.
For example, like when you lose a client, I remember when I first started out, I was like that young man. Oh, the client left me. They'll be sorry. They'll go to someone, they can't find someone better than me. And throughout the years, I finally realized, again, through coaching, communications, it's like, instead of like saying that, it's like, well, who was I being? Why? What did we do or not do as an organization? The client only saw one way is to leave. And so I sometimes, and I try to ask clients who are leaving, look, you're leaving, I understand. Please tell me where I would never have that conversation 20, 30 years ago. So it's communications, it's accountability, it's responsibility. I see that all the time.
Talk to us a little bit about the difference that you see between responsibility and accountability. Because I know when I work with people, it seems like those two things are collapsed a lot, and I have to kind of pull the bubble gum from the wall. What would you say are the key differences between those two spaces?
Sometimes I probably collapse them too, because it's a fine line to me at times. But maybe responsibility is sort of like an attribute for you. Accountability is something that basically is when there's a job or something, is it being done or not? It's more physical to me. It's more like that. It's like your job. It's like rather than responsibility is a second nature. It's should be second nature. I'm responsible for everything. I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for my company, right? But I'm accountable for certain jobs or things to be done. So I think there's more specificity around accountability to me.
Yeah, I get that completely. And when you said communication, not just communication with other people, but communication with yourself, say a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, again, as a young man, we have this sort of like never-ending thoughts in our mind. We don't even know we're talking to ourselves sometimes, right? It just happens. It's too hot in here. It's cold. I'm hungry. This is boring or whatever. And you don't know until you start. When I was first coached, and then eventually I went to Landmark too. You're not aware that you have this voice or this inner self or whatever you want to call it. And then all of a sudden you realize you have it, and sometimes you're shocked when you start listening to what it's saying.
It's not your friend much of the time.
Well, it's not your friend most of the time, isn't it? I mean, your voice is the worst enemy for you. So communications to me, there's two types. There's the external and their internal. And most people sometimes when they work on their external, like presentations or whatever, but they don't work on the internal. Like they'll get up before a speech and say, I'm gonna mess this up. I'm gonna be terrible. Rather than I've learned to clear, like get all the junk out of your mind first, and then say, okay, what's your mission here? What are you going to do? How are you going to change people's lives? Approach it with an encouraging way. But I think it's like, but communications like that, and I'm sure you're well aware. I've been doing this now for communications and coaching, or people. I've been taking coaching for a long time, and it's a never-ending saga. It's a never-ending journey. And you're constantly amazed that you still mess up. You're supposed to be better at this, but you get better at it. You're messing up, or you get accountable, or you take responsibility faster. But Most people don't. If they're going to work on communications, they do it the external, and they have to start with the internal first. I think if you start with internal, it's very powerful. You end up being able to meet challenges much better. I'll tell you something that I might want to mean by this. I had lunch with my son the other day. Now, my son and I, we were estranged for 7 years and got together in the last couple of years. And that's another story. But we're having lunch, and then I took him up to our new apartment, and Alana's there. And, and Alana starts to say, and he made a request to stay over at an apartment of ours for a night. And Alana had this sort of like past experience with Al, and he's like Michael, very neat, detailed, and it involved a towel.
Oh my God, I have PTSD already from this conversation.
And anyway, they start arguing, and I said, "Stop it!" and they just wanted to leave. I said, "No, we're not leaving like this." I turned to Al. I said, "He just, Alon just did this thing for you. Alon just did him a really big favor, and you're being upset at him. And Alon, you're talking about a towel. It's not worth this." And I got them to eventually hug each other, and just like, I'm not sure it's totally out of their space, but the thing is, years ago, I probably would have like let them go at it. Now, I mean, many years ago, decades ago, but you just realize this is wrong, and you know that if you let it stay in the space, in the communications, they're going to take this with them, and it's going to fester, and it's going to come back again and explode. So that's what I'm saying. I think if you start working on communications, you can't help but recognize when they're going wrong, especially with yourself, or you're having this thought and you say, "What am I thinking that for? That's terrible," So, but it opens you up to your own humanity, and it makes you realize it's okay to be human. But just don't be too human. Be humane also.
I like that. I like that. And speaking about money, since that's like your area of mastery, one of your areas of mastery, when you write a book called Master Your Cash Flow, talk to people about what are like 2 or 3 things they could do today to impact that world, because so many people deal with a problem with their cash flow. Money is one of the biggest things that messes with people that I find. I mean, whether they have money or not is irrelevant. It's their relationship to money that messes with them, because I have clients that have multiple tens of millions of dollars, and they still come from a scarcity mindset, and breaking that is a whole world, right? So what can people do to start to be the master of their cash flow versus at the effect of their cash flow?
That's a very complex question, and there's a lot of things they can start to do. I think the first thing is to be aware of it. Be aware of what your issues are. I mean, I'm not sure if going to a financial planner or whatever is the first thing, unless they can be a real good coach also. But I really sit down with someone, and like yourself, and say, look, it's been brought to my mind, I have these issues, or I can't sleep around money. I think and yourself, you're very wealthy or not, and everyone has issues with money. It's like issues with our parents. Everyone has issues in them.
And ourselves, and our bodies, and our whatever,
I would say, like, again, I would say sit down with someone, and probably not a financial person, and just explain some of the issues you're having in life. And maybe they can point out, like, the scarcity issue, and try to be abundant, because people don't understand they don't understand the differences. And then basically sit down with a professional, and like, let's say if one of your problems is that you can't just keep track of money, you're spendthrift. All right. Well, I think you need coaching for that, or some issues. But then once you see yourself that it's maybe a communication issues with yourself or other issues you have, then sit down with a professional and try to put some structure around it. And we live in a country that lacks any kind of financial education in public schools anymore, in college. I don't know how many professionals, distinguished, professional, successful people I've had as clients that don't know a thing about money.
It's amazing.
And so it's a national problem. But I think, at first you have to, maybe like any issue, you have to be multi-pronged at it. It's like if you want to lose weight, it's just not a matter of stop eating. It may be exercise, other things. It's multi-pronged. So I would say that basically, if you're having a problem like I can't pay my bills, then say, okay, I can't pay my bills. Who can I speak to about this? And speak to a friend, ask for help. Speak to a parent, a friend, say, what did you do? You seem to have it all together. And maybe they can point you to someone that's helped them out. And then, and maybe you take those baby steps and start to learn a bit about finance. You don't have to become a CPA. You don't have to become a wealth advisor, but just be a little more aware. Again, it's just like good health. Just be a little more aware of it and start to take some baby steps and ask for help on how to eventually maybe get your act in order around money.
I love what you're saying because it does tie back to what you said about asking for help. And, sometimes what I find messes with, especially entrepreneurs, is they don't know how to do something. So they want to do something. They have a vision for a new part of their company or a new part of their life, whatever. Maybe I want to do online courses, or I want to build a division that'll do this, but they don't know how. Then they're stopped or they're slowed down. So I always tell people, okay, don't ask how. That is a stupid question. Ask who knows, who's done it, and go study them. And that really so resonates with what you said about ask for help. It's like, I don't know how to do whatever, funnels and blah, blah, blahs and podcast. I don't know how to do all this stuff. I just had a vision. And then I just asked some people, how do you do it? People know.
That's again, and again, you never you always keep on improving in your life as you go along. It probably wasn't until the last 15 years of my firm before I sold it that I kept on thinking, I should have a board of advisors. I should have people around me that tear me apart, tear me and my management team apart at least quarterly. And I finally did it. I got 5 outside people, not any friends, not any clients.
No yes men.
And their job was to just make us more successful. And they could ask anything they wanted, and we would be accountable to anything that they said. And I would tell you, the years I had this board, they tore us apart. They took me to my word every quarter. The management, they were great, and we had a lot of fun. And you have to learn not to be defensive. Just sit there. There's a lot of things you keep on learning. I mean, you learn as a parent, you keep on learning. You learn as a business person. And that's the biggest problem with an entrepreneur. I think you're right. They keep on chasing every idea, and they don't have people around them that can counterweight their impulses or their compulsiveness, maybe, and say, look, that's a great idea, but let's put this in the one to be considered later, and let's keep on focusing here, or something like that. I think you have to surround yourself with good people. I do think I'm very strong on this. In a company, there's only one visionary, but you need the other people. You pick it where the mountain is, and they build the road. But you need to you keep on asking for help. Great thing is, you're asking for help from people. How would you do it? What am I doing wrong? And that's why many entrepreneurs really go through a series of bankruptcies before they maybe make it or never make it. They never learn with that. They keep on chasing shiny objects, and they never put together. I say they never really ask for the help or how to do it, and or can you show me how to do it?
Yeah, and that is a big thing, that if people could just develop that one muscle, like even just every day, make 3 requests. Just every day, just do it, whether it's, pass the salt or, or will you, make dinner tonight or whatever it is. Just, it can be in business, it could be personal life, it could be in your well-being, but just that muscle is so underused for high performers, because high performers just get it done. And they're in get it done mode. And that is a very draining mode. It can be depleting. And actually, just from a brain science perspective, it's like a dopamine hit. You have a problem, you solve it, it's like a little dopamine hit, like drugs, right? And then you keep going for the dopamine hit rather than the sustainable kind of success that involves lifting other people up and allowing them to shine, which any good leader does.
Well, that's exactly right. It's not only does it's draining for you, it's draining for the organization. It drains morale.
Yes.
People don't want to be part of something that they can't give or contribute to because that person knows all the answers and they don't trust me. They don't trust me to be part of it. So and quite frankly, not only there's a lot of business people that really have never learned that. And what gets me is that uh, they never try to. Maybe there's again, maybe they don't stop to have that conversation with themselves or coaching. But again, even coaching, you have to ask for help.
You do, and you have to you have coaches. I mean, you are in that mode of coaching. I have coaches, and I'm a really good coach, but I can't coach myself. I can't see what I can't see. That's crazy. You have to have people around you, whether it's a board of advisors or a coach, that can see what you can't see so you can accomplish what you envision.
Well, I think you're right. I think any successful athlete will tell you they wouldn't be anywhere near what they could be without a great coach. And that doesn't mean the coach has to be a great player, just a great coach. And it's the same thing, whether it's in the boardroom or the C-suite or in the home. It's like you have people should be they underutilize coaching, but I think that's another problem with our educational system. We don't teach the importance of communications. I mean, I tell every professional I see, I don't care what courses you take in college or high school, get a communications coach, get yourself a good communications coach. You want to really have yourself open to your dreams in life. It's like learn to speak to yourself, learn to have communications or conversations with yourself as well as other people. I wish I could have gotten coaching in communications much earlier in my career. I think I would have avoided possibly the problems I had that led me almost to bankruptcy.
I think you're so right. And I also agree with you about the lack of financial education, because if I knew back in my teens, 20s, what I've learned now about residual income and ways to, support my vision for my family and my legacy. If I knew that 30 years ago, it would be a very different thing. But we don't teach our children they're not financially literate. They barely, my kids don't even know how to write a check. I mean, nobody even writes checks anymore. It's like, where do you write what? And tell us a little bit about the nonprofit that you work with the inner city to provide financial scholarships or education.
Well, the Inner City Scholarship, I got involved with them. It's with the Archdiocese of New York. I had a client who helped found that. His name was Paul Woolard. Paul Woolard was a World War II vet, and he was the chairman of the Revlon Corporation for many years. He retired and he started this, and he ran it for 35 years until he passed away until he was 90. And he inspired me. Paul was again one of those individuals, maybe remind me of like my father. His word was bond, loyalty, family, conviction, making a difference for the world. And so he got me involved. And so what it is that you really help pay for either the elementary school or high school education of an inner city child in the Catholic school system. And quite frankly, so all I was doing is that, and I would help him get people for that. But through that, I did have a chance to teach a couple of charter school classes, 8th grade classes, finance. Their teachers would call me up, and I had a blast there. I would go up to like the Bronx, and they had a charter school somewhere, and they would let me speak for like 2 hours. And I had 8th graders, and the teacher would tell me they all came in their best dressed, and I told them they had to bring calculators and pencils and pens, and I did most people would not know the show today, but Monty Hall's Let's Make a Deal.
I know the show.
For number one, for number two, I would make it fun, a game. I would say, okay, for number one, you have a penny today, and it doubles every day for 30 days. That's number one. For number two, so $25,000 lump sum cash right now. Which would you take? And I made them go to the calculators, and some of them couldn't do it, whatever. And half the room is taking this, and they're shouting, and they're having fun. And I showed them, they take the penny, and double it for every 30 days, you'll have more than $1 million at the end of 30 days. I said, see, sometimes small things mean a lot. And we went through some fun things, like asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up. Someone wanted to be scientists, basketball players. And I said, okay, so if you're making this money, how much do you think you have to, we just played with it. How much do you think you have to earn, whatever. And then finally, the teacher said, Al, the class is they want to have a trip to Washington, 8th grade trip to Washington, and they're having trouble raising the money. They need $2,000 something dollars. Anyway, and I said, okay, let's raise $2,000. I said, how much does a can of soda cost in the school? And I forget, let's say it's $2. I said, good. How many cans of soda do you guys drink a day? And they said, well, 2, 3. I said, okay, good. Why do we do this? Why don't we all say, we're going to drink 1 can less a day and put that $2 in the kitty for them? And there's like 30 students there. So that's $60, that's $60 a day. And I showed them how within 2 or 3 months, they would have $2,000.
And wild. It's so great.
They were inspired. So you can teach finance to these kids. I know that they will not forget that. Some things that they showed them that day, they will not forget.
I feel like you should be doing YouTube shorts that we could be playing for our teenagers, just to make it fun, because it's not even for teenagers, for half my 30 and 40-year-old clients who don't understand what anything is around money, what interest rates and how does a bond work and all these things. And it's just, people are trained, I think, especially in our country, but I don't know how it is in other countries, but they're trained that there are people who handle that. You don't need to know about that. It's very complicated. You don't want to get into the stock market because you could lose everything. It's very risky. You need people who understand all of that. And it's not real. It's a total scam,
Yeah, no, I know. And I think, I don't know why we don't do this anymore. I remember one time when I was, again, in Flemington, I went to the local high schools. See, when I first went through my almost bankruptcy, I had an epiphany. I eventually met a man who was teaching financial planning. I said, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, because I could never change a person's life with a tax return, but I can help them achieve their dreams and maybe go on to do something else to help the world. And that inspired me. I changed my whole company that way and just went from there. But I remember going to the local high school and I said, look, I want to teach gratis a financial planning course or a finance course. And the teachers union wouldn't let me. They saw it as a threat to their job.
I don't even understand that connection.
Well, but I don't either, except that I suddenly realized that, because I was very zealous at the time. Anyone who wanted to talk about planning or finance, you put 2 people together on a street corner, I talked to them. I gave so many speeches. I went to private schools. They had some private high schools, and that was fun. But again, the system wears you down. There's a lot of, to make a difference, I think that you've got to have people all shaking their head that this is important for people. And I don't think a lot of people think it's important when they're young. When they're young or young adults. And it's only when we start to get a little older and all of a sudden 50 and 60 don't look that far away, all of a sudden we get scared and we say, oh, maybe I should do something about this. But so I don't have an answer for it, except that, well, I did help with a partner. I started a company recently called Servat, which in Persian means wealth. And it basically is to create an app for financial education.
Oh, beautiful.
And we're aiming it at the Gen Zers. And so we're in the process of hopefully we're going to launch it in the next few months, 5 months. But it's a way maybe I can leverage some of my experiences and my book, my chapters, my stories. And if I can help just a group of people out there, it'd be great. What's really great is that now I have people walking up to me, they're either their parents or their children, and they thank me. They thank me for what I've done as a financial planner or when I have my company. And it's gratifying, but I'm a little frustrated. I can only do it for so many. So that's why I'm trying to do it through this app. And
I
that's why
think that's the way to go, to bring it to scale.
yeah, that's why I try to do some things in articles. That's why I met this guy who I'm partnering with. So I read these articles on LinkedIn about financial experiences. And he read my book, whatever. He says, look, I have a great idea that we can help people possibly change the world. And I thought, sounds like something I want to be involved in.
Well, I think we're going to have you back when it launches so we can talk about that for
Great.
sure.
Yeah.
And just in closing, sort of like, what is for you a lasting legacy?
A lasting legacy. You know, physical things fall, books deteriorate. You know, if I can help change a person's life and they can are inspired to help another, and somehow that can keep on doubling.
Like the pennies.
Yeah. So, if someone 100 years from now can say, my dad met this guy or whatever, this guy, and it changed my life, and they get something out of this, and that there's something they get is that they now are not going to be tied now to a job for 50 years, but now they can do something else. That something else is doing something that benefits the world. If I can know that what I'm doing is helping other people to help other people, that would make me smile when I'm passing away. If I'm dying my last breath, and I'll say, look, I feel like I've been of contribution. I feel like I've been my mission in life.
I love it. I love it. Well, you, my friend, are a treasure. And I thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. And is there any place people can find you and engage with you?
Well, you can go to LinkedIn. My handle's out at Zdnenek, ALZDENEK, or you can go to alzdenek.com. I have a website there. You go to Amazon if you want to either inquire about my books or see what people have said about them. And feel free, if you figured all that, if they contact you, please let me know, and I'll be more
I will put all your links in the show notes so people can contact you directly. Go right to Amazon, go right to LinkedIn, and really get impacted by Al's wealth of not just knowledge, but the impact that he wants to make has him say things that most people are afraid to say. Like the courage to be vulnerable and the courage to, share what you've dealt with in a way that leaves people with access to dealing with things themselves. So I just so appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. And I know the next time I see you, we'll probably be in Paris, but.
That'd be great. Well, thank you. And thank you for being one of the coaches that allowed me to be that way. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of the Be Unmessable With podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Be Unmessable With the podcast. I always love that you spend a little time with us listening or watching this podcast, and I want to make sure that you get value every time you do. So I want to offer you a free 1-hour workshop on money. Does money mess with you? If you're a human being, then it likely does. At least every human being I've ever met, it messes with them to some degree. So it's not so much how much money you have, but your relationship to money. And we have a free 1-hour workshop that was co-led by myself, my good friend, media icon, Robin Quivers, and our wealth coach, Tyrone Jackson. So click below and you can have instant access to Unmessable with Money. Unleash your inner millionaire.